I found that people tend to fall in love with ideas and results, and they ignore the missing part where success actually grows and lives. This one could sting a little bit. This is the Construction Leading Edge podcast from constructionleadingedge.com and constructionbusinessaccelerator.com. My name is Todd DeWalt. It's my job to help you eliminate chaos and maximize revenue in your business. This is the podcast for the small construction business owner. And we're going to talk about thinking traps today. We're going to talk about some of the things that you're doing that get you in trouble over and over and over. And if I do my job, then you'll realize that the problem may not be out there. You don't need some magical strategy. There's just a few things that you need to make changes to. A few things you just need to stop doing. We'll talk about low percentage shots. We'll talk about anchoring and some other thinking traps that I found are pretty common as I talk to hundreds of construction business owners. Before we get into that, a couple of resources that I want to talk to you about. First of all is I want to tell you about a call that I had not too long ago with a construction business owner, and we talked about the type of work they were doing, and they were frustrated that they weren't making money. They were pricing jobs pretty fat numbers, but they weren't making the kind of money that they wanted. So I asked the question, let's talk about where you're bleeding profit. Where are the profit bleeds at? So I asked questions like, how efficient would you say your crews are? Are they operating at 90% productivity, or are they like 50% productivity? And then I asked, how much material do you think you're wasting every month? And then how much rework are you doing? How much time are you spending going back and reworking stuff because customer wanted to change, you were working off the wrong set of documents, etc. This particular individual used subcontractors, so I asked, how well do you think you're managing cost from your subcontractors? And what about unsolicited charity? How much work are you doing for free? Either because you don't have the right documentation to support the change order, or the client would have been happy to pay for the change, but you didn't track it and it never got to the office. And in this case, this was not a large company, but just using numbers on the low end, he was bleeding about $10,000 every month. $10,000 of profit bleed every month. Not a big company at all, it's pretty easy to do. If you think about labor costs, let's just talk about productivity. If you have, say, 5 employees and your crew is losing, your 5-man crew is losing an hour a day of productivity, either because of material not being there, they're spending time picking up materials in the supply house or Home Depot, standing around waiting for information, waiting on the client to do something, etc., then 5 employees at a labor rate of $40 an hour, including fringe and whatever else goes into it, that's $52,000 a year. $52,000 a year in profit bleed. So I would ask you those questions. How much money are you bleeding from low productivity, from unsolicited charity, doing work and not getting paid for it, rework, subcontractor costs, and wasted material, just to name a few? Think about that. That's the part that could sting. That's one of the parts about this podcast that could sting a little bit. And the worst part is, for a lot of people, those profit bleeds are not even the worst. The worst is this thing called opportunity cost, which I don't have time to go into in this podcast, but if you want to find out more about opportunity cost, this hidden cost that doesn't show up on your bank account, you'll never get an invoice for it, but it could be hammering your bottom line. It could be the reason for your cash flow problems. It could be the reason that you're not getting where you want to be. Then I want to get a free video series in your hands, and the first video is about opportunity cost. If you want that, go to constructionbusinessaccelerator.com/secrets. Put your information in there. You'll get instant access to that, plus a couple of other videos where I'll share some of the secrets of big, successful contractors. What are they doing that you're not? How are they mitigating opportunity cost? How are they avoiding cash flow problems? How are they growing? How are they operating their business? You can get those secrets of successful contractors at constructionbusinessaccelerator.com/secrets. And then if you own a construction business or manage a team, manage a project, then you know it's all about managing the flow of information. You got to get the right information to the right people at the right time and at the right level of detail. And then if you want to be able to win any sort of dispute or litigation, worst case, then you have to have an organized documentation of all of that communication. And that's exactly what fieldchat.com is going to do for you. It will eliminate what I call the Bermuda Triangle of information, where information just disappears. And that is where you have conversations like, but I thought I sent you that. I thought I told you. I thought you knew. I thought he said, she said. Fieldchat.com will eliminate the Bermuda Triangle of information, and it will give you an organized, searchable record of your information, and it is super simple. That's what it does, communication. It's not going to do a lot of stuff that you don't need, and it also will integrate with Procore, PlanGrid, and it is an absolute no-brainer. From a cost standpoint, think about the time that you're losing looking for information, communicating with people. This is an absolute no-brainer. It's a few bucks a person per month, and right now you can get 15% off fieldchat.com by going to fieldchat.com/edge. fieldchat.com/edge. What it means for you is accelerated progress, fewer mistakes, less rework, less chaos, because you'll have streamlined, organized communication. So go to fieldchat.com/edge, get your 15% off, and start organizing your communications. I heard a story recently about a guy that learned how to play tennis, and he learned from a tennis pro and got fairly good at playing tennis, and then he continued to play this tennis pro, competing with him on a regular basis. Like once a week, they would get together and play tennis. And Scott, the guy who was telling the story, who was learning how to play tennis, said he got really frustrated after a couple of years because no matter how much he practiced, how much he played, he could never beat this tennis pro. The guy was just always a little bit better than him. So Scott tried to find out, what's the secret? What is this guy doing? What sort of ninja level skills or tricks is this guy using on me? What's he doing that I'm not? And finally, Scott figured out that it wasn't that the tennis pro was doing something amazing. All the tennis pro had done was he recognized some situations where Scott would always take low percentage shots. So this tennis pro figured out Scott's weakness and realized, okay, all I have to do is put him in this situation and Scott will basically screw himself, okay? All he had to do was create a situation where Scott would screw himself over. He would put him in a situation where he would consistently take low percentage shots. And these low percentage shots, Scott realized, were shots that he would take that every time he was about to take it, he thought, this time it's going to work. And it rarely, if ever, worked. He was convinced that it would work, but he was just wrong. He was just wrong. So in this podcast, I want to talk about some thinking traps, some of the low percentage shots that construction business owners and leaders, and frankly, all people take. Some thinking traps, some psychology, some of the ways that our brains are wired that work against us, quite frankly, in a lot of situations. And all you need to do is recognize those situations where you tend to take low percentage shots, where you tend to screw yourself over, and then just make some minor adjustments. So here's one of the most common. We'll start off with one of the most common, and say what you want to about Donald Trump. But he actually uses this thinking trap, which is also a negotiation strategy, to his benefit. If you recall, when Trump ran for president, one of the big parts of his platform was, we're going to build the wall. And he came out strong and said, we're going to build the wall, we're going to deport all of the illegals, and we're going to make Mexico pay for all of it. And everybody went crazy, and Trump let that sort of marinate for a while. And then he came back and said, okay, I'll tell you what, we're not going to deport the illegals. We're only going to make Mexico pay for half of it, and we're just going to build the wall. And everybody thought, what a reasonable guy. Wow. And the whole time, all Trump wanted was the wall. So what was this negotiation tactic? Well, it's called anchoring. This is a powerful negotiation tactic that you probably use against yourself, and you can actually use it in your favor. You use it against yourself, other people to use it against you, and just recognizing, somebody's trying to anchor me. This is going to help you in your negotiation, and if you'll just not anchor yourself, you'll be a lot better off. So what is anchoring? Anchoring is the human tendency to rely too heavily on the first information that you receive when you're making decisions. So anchoring is the tendency to put way too much emphasis, way too much value on the first piece of information that you receive when you're making a decision. So how does this show up in the construction world? Let's say a client, whether you're a construction business owner or you're working in the field, somebody, a homeowner, commercial client, general contractor, whoever you're working with, somebody on the customer side says, hey, Todd, here's what we're thinking of doing. How much do you think it's going to cost? Ballpark, just back of the napkin, down and dirty. I just need a wag at this. And you think, all right, I want to be I want to provide good customer service. I want to provide value. I want to give them information. So you think about some quick number and you say, I think it's going to cost about maybe you make all sorts of qualifications. Don't hold me to this. This is just a wag. I'll have to figure this out and figure this out. And I'll have to check with this guy and that guy and this girl. And I got to talk to the office. And this means absolutely nothing. It's probably going to be about, I would guess, $35,000. Again, wild ass guess. And then they say, okay, let's pursue this further. And 6 months go down the road. They actually put a design in place. They double the scope. Everything changes. And you present a final estimate, and it's $40,000. What do you think they say? Typically, they're going to say, but you said it was only going to cost $35,000. You just anchored yourself. The same thing happens with schedules, with dollars, with whatever it is. People tend to put too much emphasis, too much value on the first piece of information offered. So just don't anchor yourself. I talked about this in one of my live events called The Advance, and there was a custom home builder who heard this and said, oh my gosh, if I would just keep my mouth shut at the beginning of a project, then I would save myself so much trouble, because he figured out that most of the problems, most of the frustration from his clients and most of the chaos he dealt with was because he gave a really aggressive schedule right up front. And he anchored himself to something, and then he had to scramble and fight the rest of the project to make that happen. So one way to do this is if somebody asks you for a schedule. Let's say you're proposing on a project, and they say, so yeah, we're excited about this. We want to get going. When do you think you could start? How long do you think it's going to take? Be very, very careful, because this is a thinking trap. You're just about to step into a trap. So a good response is, let me send you a detailed schedule. Let me get back to you. I'll find out. You can say lots of things other than, I don't know, but you can respond with, like one of my clients did, whenever somebody asked him for a schedule date, actually, they didn't even have to ask. When he put together a proposal and a contract, he included a schedule, a detailed schedule that shows, approximately when he could start based on his workload, and about how long he thought it would take. So he would preempt that question and make sure he didn't get anchored. So don't anchor yourself. Understand that the first piece of information you share with someone, no matter how much qualification you put around it, they're going to probably use it against you because that's the thing they're going to remember. All right. The next thinking trap is the sunk cost fallacy or the sunk cost bias. And this is when you are invested in something, you've spent money on something, and the sunk cost bias says the more you invest in something, the harder it is to abandon it. What this looks like is you've got a trade partner or a subcontractor who's on your project, and they were really slow to get started. They're behind schedule. You're having to supplement their workforce. They're a couple of weeks late. Things are not going well, but you've already paid them something. So your brain tells you, hey, we're in this too far. And we have to keep plugging away. We have to keep throwing good money after what could be bad money to make it work. So in many cases, the sunk cost bias tells you, or the sunk cost fallacy says, let's keep investing in something because we've already invested in it. And I remember early in my career, I got some great advice from an executive at the general contracting firm that I worked at. He said, when things go bad, things start going bad with a subcontractor, make a quick decision, pull the plug, because it hardly ever gets better. The same thing applies with employees. If something has changed dramatically and they're not performing and you've had the tough conversation, you've set the expectations, maybe they've been with you for years and you've got all of this time and energy and money invested in them, fight the sunk cost fallacy and don't invest more money and time in this person when you know it's not going to work. Don't invest more time just because you've invested lots of time and money in the first place. So relationships with customers, relationships with trade partners, equipment. I've owned this piece of equipment for 20 years. I've spent all of this money maintaining it and updating it. I can't afford to sell it. Well, you can't afford to keep it. So beware of the sunk cost fallacy. Another big one that I see all the time is just procrastination and avoidance. Hey, here's an uncomfortable situation, an uncomfortable conversation with a client or a banker or an insurance company or a general contractor or an employee, and I don't want to do that because I'm not sure how it's going to work out. So I'll just go do something. I'll keep myself busy so I can avoid it. And then at the end of the day, I'll say, oh my gosh, I didn't realize how late it was. I've been so busy moving papers from one side of my desk to the other, moving emails from one folder to the other, doing meaningless work that's not strategic at all. I don't have time. Maybe I'll do it tomorrow. Procrastination and avoidance. And that thing where you are keeping yourself busy doing stuff that's not moving the needle at all, I call that sanctified procrastination because it feels like you're busy and you're telling yourself, wow, I'm busy doing this stuff. I'm out sweeping the floors in the shop and running out to Home Depot to get stuff for my crew and not doing the stuff that you need to do. That's sanctified procrastination. Feels busy, but if you're honest with yourself, you're just avoiding the stuff that you're uncomfortable with. And that is a thinking trap. The next one is something that, as a guy who has a podcast, I might be a little bit to blame for this one. And it is, I call it Information Bulemia. Information Bulemia. You know, if you saw someone who was like 400 pounds overweight, you would say that individual probably has an unhealthy relationship with food, right? Well, a lot of people that I run into have an unhealthy relationship with information. They are constantly consuming information. They want to read 52 books a year and listen to 6 podcasts and then listen to audiobooks in the shower and then watch TED Talks at lunchtime and documentaries at night. They have this never-ending appetite for information because they think if I just consume enough information, just absorb all of this information from all these various sources, then I'll find this silver bullet. I'll find the silver bullet. And frankly, the silver bullet syndrome is another thinking trap, to think that there's this one thing out there, and when I find it, all of my problems will be solved. Well, this is my opinion. I am a recovering information bulimic. I used to read lots of books. That was me. I used to read lots of books, listen to lots of podcasts, listen to audiobooks, watch TED Talks, and I was suffering from information overload. And the reason I call it information bulimia is because I would consume all of this information, and then I wouldn't get any value out of it. Maybe I would regurgitate it back to people, but it wasn't actually showing up in my life or my business. So I dialed it back. I stopped consuming so much information. People ask me, so Todd, how many books a year do you read? I might read 3 or 4 books a year. And I might reread or re-listen to a couple of books a year. Personally, my approach now is I would rather read one really important book like Extreme Ownership or Think and Grow Rich and spend an entire year reading that one book and absorbing it and having all of the important stuff show up in my life than to read 52 books a year and not have any of it show up. Because not only does reading all of those books not really do you any good if it doesn't actually show up, if you're not applying it, it actually makes it worse. It creates anxiety because you have all these differing opinions from different sources and you're trying to put it all together to make it work, and it just doesn't. So what I found was, for me, and I've seen this work for a lot of other people, just pick one source. Dial it back, go on an information diet, information calorie deficit, if you want to call it that, and pick 1 or 2 sources, and then really focus on that and focus more on something other than the consumption of information, which we're going to talk about here in a minute. So information bulimia is a big deal that leads to overwhelm and anxiety and confusion. And then the last thinking trap I want to talk to you about is what I call, well, it's something that I noticed in a basketball game. My son plays basketball. Actually, I've seen it in sports a lot. My son plays basketball. My daughters play volleyball and basketball. And I noticed this interesting phenomenon with kids' sports, and it also happens with a lot of entrepreneurs and leaders, especially business owners. But here's what it looks like on the basketball court. My son's team would, there was this really narrow zone of, on the scoreboard where they played the best. So if they were up by 20 at halftime, then they slacked off, they got sloppy, they weren't focused, and then there were several games that they would lose, even after being up 20. Similarly, if they were down by a certain margin, 10 or 15 points, then they just gave up, and they didn't try. But, man, when they were up by 5, down by 5, they were in this very narrow zone, that's when they played really well. And the issue was their play was determined by the scoreboard. So if they were way up, then they got loose and sloppy and undisciplined and they weren't focused. If they were way down, they just didn't even try because they told themselves it's not going to matter anyway. They already gave up before the game was over. And I call this resultophilia. Resultophilia, to be in love with the results. So what does this look like for business owners? Well, here's what it looks like for business owners. I see a lot of business owners who are on this roller coaster, this financial roller coaster where they have high points where they're incredibly busy, everything's going really well, they're making money, and then somehow they get down in this low point where they don't have work, they're not making money, things are not going well, and then they get back on top, and then they go through this cycle, ups and downs and ups and downs. And the problem is they have resultophilia. Their actions, the way that they're operating their business, is determined by their bank account. So when things are really good, lots of money in the bank, lots of backlog, they dial back the business development. They're not out networking, they're not hustling because they think, hey, we got plenty of money in the bank, I'm going to take it easy, I'm going to take my foot off the gas. And almost inevitably, they're going to end up back in that low point. And then when people get in that low point, they're looking at the bank account, thinking, this is never going to work, failure is imminent, red lights are going off, this thing's about to go off the cliff, it's not going to work anyway, so why even try? They start looking at plan B, they start planning their exit strategy, and they panic, and they too are looking at the score, but that score is telling, they're interpreting the score as it's hopeless, and it's not going to work, and they play very differently. So that's why I call it resultophilia. Being in love with results is not your friend. If you've heard of Nick Saban, the Alabama football coach, he has this philosophy called the process. He tells his people, don't look at the score. If in the weight room, if you focus on putting your reps in, on the practice field, if you focus on running that play, running that drill in the games, if you do your job, if everybody embraces the process, if everybody focuses on the process, the score will take care of itself. So you have to focus on the process. If you are a resultophile and you love results and you have a tendency, if you're honest, remember I said at the beginning, this could sting a little bit, but if you're a resultophile and you find yourself having these, if you look back over your career, if you find you're on a roller coaster of super highs, down and lows, and there's this constant up and down, it's very possible that you are a resultophile. The way you're operating your business is being determined by the results, by the bank account, by whatever the results are that you're in love with. And you need to fall out of love with results and fall in love with the process. And there's this interesting dynamic. There's this gap between information and results. If you think about it, let's say you had some aha moment. You learned about something, whether it's a piece of technology or some strategy. You have an aha moment and you think, oh my gosh, this is going to change everything. And then you are hoping for some result. Maybe you're in love with the information. Maybe you're in love with the result. But there's this gap between the aha moment that comes from information and the result where it actually shows up in your life, and that is the process. The gap between the aha moment and the realization of when it actually shows up in your life, that's the process. And too many people are in love with the idea, too many people are in love with the result, and the successful people are the ones who fall in love with the process, and they embrace the process. The process is where you get better. The process is where you develop perseverance, where you learn skills, where you break bad habits and develop new habits. The process is your friend. You need to focus on the process. So let's talk about some practical things you can do. Maybe you are an admitted information bulimic. Maybe you are an admitted resultophile. And I'm telling you, I was both. I am a recovering Resultophile. I am a recovering information bulimic. So let's talk about, how do you develop processophilia? How do you become a processophile? You want to love the process. So let's say you want to lose weight. Stop spending so much time looking at Pinterest and Facebook and whatever, trying to find the perfect exercise plan and the perfect diet. Find one that's good enough, and then fall in love with the process. Fall in love with the process of going to the gym. Learn to love going to the gym. Stop trying to find the silver bullet and embrace the process. If you want to get better with money, you want to have more money in retirement, become have a higher financial IQ, then forget about spending all the time absorbing information or dreaming about the future, and start saving money. And embrace the process of saving money, reducing expenses, making a little bit more money, learning about financial things, developing your financial acumen. If you are an employee, I have a lot of people who contact me and say, Todd, I want some career advice. Well, here's my advice. Fall in love with feedback. Feedback is the breakfast of champions. Look for feedback. How can I get better? Because that's what's going to make you better. Stop looking for the pats on the back and the results and the promotions and focusing on the future, and learn. Get yourself into uncomfortable situations where you're stretched, and get comfortable being uncomfortable, and then fall in love with feedback. If you're a business owner, you want to sell more work. If you are in that low point on the roller coaster and you need backlog, then stop focusing on spending all your time absorbing information, reading stuff from the sales gurus. There's nothing wrong with it, except that you're not applying it. Find something that works, and then fall in love with marketing and networking, building your referral network. Fall in love with the process. Every day you're working LinkedIn. Every day you're making phone calls. Every week you're going and meeting with your ideal referral partners. Fall in love with the process. If you want to streamline your operations, then fall in love with building systems. Getting to the root cause of problems, putting systems in place, growing your people. That's how you're going to grow your business. You're not going to grow your business by loving all these ideas or dreaming about the future, looking at the results. You're going to grow your business by focusing on processes. I can tell you from firsthand experience, I grew a company from 15 employees to 50 employees, and it was all because of systems and processes. So I think I mentioned at the top of this podcast that entrepreneurs are a little bit like ukulele players. Actually, they're identical to ukulele players in an interesting way. A few months ago, my wife bought me a ukulele. It was a Christmas present. It's kind of a fun little gift. I play guitar, so I started messing around on this ukulele, and it occurred to me that there are three types of ukulele players, or some people pronounce it ukulele, which is kind of fun to say, but three types of ukulele players. There's the recreational ukulele player, like me. Then there's the person who somehow manages to get people to pay them to play the ukulele every once in a while. They're like the part-time gig ukulele player. And then there are actually people who make a living playing the ukulele. Maybe they have a YouTube channel, maybe they do gigs, maybe they do concerts, but believe it or not, there are people who make a living playing the ukulele. So the recreational, the part-time, and then the professional. And the interesting thing about the professional ukulele players is they have to do all sorts of stuff to be a successful professional that has nothing to do with playing the ukulele. They have to learn how to market. They have to learn how to pick songs. They have to learn how to deal with event venues. They have to sell. They have to interact with the audience. They have to be funny. They have to do all of these things to wrap a business around playing a ukulele that have nothing to do with the ukulele. But it's absolutely necessary. And it's the same way with entrepreneurs. Look, if you are an amazing electrician or an amazing pipe fitter or an amazing furniture maker or an amazing concrete finisher, if you don't fall in love with all of the things necessary, if you don't embrace all of the things necessary to be a professional, whatever you're doing, all of the things that will support a business, then you'll never make it as a professional. You'll be a part-time or you'll be a recreational fill in the blank. So this is a common thinking trap. The last common thinking trap I want to share with you is, hey, I'm a good fill in the blank. Why don't people just write me checks? It's never going to happen. That's a myth. If you think that if you build it, they will come, then you're going to spend several decades being disappointed. That worked in Field of Dreams, but just because you build it doesn't mean people will come and give you money. So you have to embrace the process. You have to embrace the business aspect of it. You have to be a professional. Even if you don't like it, even if it sucks, even if you hate it, there are going to be things that are necessary to make you a professional fill in the blank that you don't like. But the good news is you can outsource those things. You could put systems in place. You don't have to figure all of this stuff out. So to recap, the thinking traps that you want to avoid: don't get anchored, number one. Watch out for anchoring. Number two, beware of the sunk cost fallacy. Number three, beware of sanctified procrastination. Number four, recover from information bulimia. Number five, get out of a resultophilia, fall out of love with the results. And then number six, beware of the if I build it, they will come thinking trap. A couple of things I want to get into your hands. If one of the things that you hate about business is bookkeeping, then there's help available. And frankly, if you're doing your own bookkeeping, you should probably stop because you probably suck at it, and maybe you hate it. Most of the people I talk to that do their own books, they hate it and they suck at it. So think about what you could do with the time that you're currently spending on bookkeeping. Think about how much better it would feel if you knew somebody else who knew what they were doing was actually looking at your books. Well, I found a firm that specializes in providing outsourced bookkeeping for small construction business owners. It's called Apparatus Contractor Services. And if you want to learn more about them, then go to constructionleadingedge.com/headache. constructionleadingedge.com/headache. And you can find out how they help you. You'll be able to read some testimonials from other folks about how they have successfully outsourced and handed off the headache of bookkeeping and payroll and financial reporting. Also, if you want to systematize your business, you want to be able to get to the real root cause of what you're dealing with instead of treating symptoms. And if you want to be able to put a system in place, regardless of what it is, if you want to be able to build a system that people will actually use and will actually work, then there are some things that you need to know. And I'm releasing, again, for a limited time, my training workshop, Systematize Your Construction Business. If it's available right now, then you can get it. If it's not, you can join the wait list, and I'll send it to you when it's available. But all you have to do is go to constructionbusinessaccelerator.com, and you can sign up for the wait list, or if it's available, you can grab it. constructionbusinessaccelerator.com. And then, look, if you're a construction business owner and you're saying, I need help, I'm tired of the roller coaster, I need help eliminating these profit bleeds, I'm getting hammered with opportunity cost, then let's talk. All right, I have a couple of programs. I have a one-on-one coaching program where I can help you directly work through these profit bleeds and solve them. I can help you put systems in place. I can help you get out of your own way. All right, let's talk about that. To schedule your call, just go to constructionleadingedge.com. there's a big red button there that says schedule a free call. And that's exactly what you'll be able to do. And we can talk about that. I'll help you identify what you need to work on. And then if there's a program of mine that makes sense for you, then we'll get you locked in and signed up for that. But let's talk. If you need help, there's help available. I can direct you to resources. And one of the best things I can do is get on the phone. So go to constructionleadingedge.com to sign up for that. Get on the wait list. Go to constructionbusinessaccelerator.com. If you're like, I can't remember all of these websites, then just send me a text. Let me know what you're looking for, and I'll send it to you. Send me a text, 859-667-2015. Let me know what you're looking for, and I'll get you that information. As always, I appreciate the ratings and the reviews. If you could take a minute, leave a rating and a review, share this podcast with somebody you think would get some value out of it, that would be amazing. And as always, thank you so much for listening. I'll see you next time.